So it is now 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call the WSESD board meeting to order. The meeting of the WSESD will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and to participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. I'm also going to read the norms that we agreed to. Use sensitivity when discussing school matters. Engage in respectful and non-judgmental listening. Assume positive intentions. Be accountable for impact. Board discussions should include all voices equally. Be mindful of each other's time. Share responsibility. So, two other things. The third executive session, the agenda does not indicate what it is for, so I will just let you know. It is under 1 VSA 313A1F, confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body. And the last thing, before we move on to the actual agenda items, is you may notice, if you've reviewed the agenda, you may notice that there are actual times listed. We are going to try to stick to these as close as possible because we've had a lot of people on the board, I assume even the administration would love to have the meetings a little bit shorter and more timely. So I'm going to, some of the board members have agreed to prompt. If you hear a board member say 1 minute, means we have 1 minute before that that topic is, the time is expired, and the board will determine whether we need to spend more time. If I ask the question and there's no response, we will move on. So, the first thing that we will do is student matters. We have allotted 5 to 10 minutes for that. Are there any students online who would like to question, comment?
There's a TJ, but I don't know that that's a student.
Only one name I don't recognize. Doesn't have a hand up.
Doesn't have a hand up. Okay, I'm going to ask a second time under student matters. Anyone who would like to share, comment, question, concern? Okay, third time, and before we move on. Okay, we are now moving on to the administrative report at 6:03, so we are a few minutes early and try to keep ahead of the game. Mark.
Great. Okay, so we are on the eve of pretty much opening the school year, which is super exciting. So we have an in-service schedule in place for professional development to get the year started. Tomorrow we'll be welcoming all new employees to BUHS for, and Bryn Tucker and Paul have done a lot of work around us.
It's all Bryn. She is just amazing. She really has done great organizing.
A formal opportunity to introduce all of our new employees to this campus and to hear from different folks at central office. Starting on the 25th is Friday. It's our first in-service day at our schools, and that'll be followed by in-service days on the 28th and 29th, next Monday and Tuesday, with the first day of school being Wednesday. So per the contract with the union, half of the time we will be using for formal professional development that we put together for our staffs, and then the other half of that time will be more of a free time for teachers to set up their classrooms, get ready for that first day of school, which obviously is super important. So that's the in-service schedule. I don't know if there are any questions around that. Tim?
What's the professional development topic?
The topic?
Yeah, what's it focused on? Or is it just housekeeping?
School site specific. So the PD days to kick off the school year are controlled by school principals and their leadership teams. Other professional development days later in the school year are school district professional development days that Paul could speak to. But to open the school year, it's really reviewing the action plan, clarity around what the goals are, and then setting up times for teams to get together, but essentially starting the foundation for kicking off the school year.
Okay.
So for instance, Academy School has on Monday, the 28th, Sarah Ward, who presented this great workshop last October on executive functioning and just had a whole bunch of really great, highly usable techniques, approaches for getting kids sort of maintaining their executive functioning, moving from place to place in a sort of a coordinated way. And she's coming back to Academy because it was such a success. Kelly's bringing her back to Academy for the morning of the 28th, and then in the afternoon, staff planning. So I think the idea there is that they would get more of that information and then sort of work on implementing it in their classrooms in the afternoon. That would be the expectation.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
For the high school, I can't speak for the student advisory committee, but they had the half-day workshop last year, and I'm sure they would be thrilled to see a follow-up to that in PD for the high school.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, and I think I would love to do something more of that this year. The opening days, the MLSS team has worked a lot this summer in creating opportunities for staff to support students within the classroom, and so they're going to do presentations on Friday. And then Monday, we are doing an Act 1 training that's required by state law.
Act 1, Aaron's Law.
Yeah, and there's a new program that they're offering that's geared towards high school students, which they haven't had in the past, and it's called Project Safety, Project Selfie.
Yeah.
And so they're coming to do the teacher presentation on that, and I'm hoping later in the fall we'll be able to do a parent night by the same organization.
That's great.
Yeah.
Super. Okay, so I thought I'd take a little bit of time just doing an overview of our admin retreat in August. So coming around our overview agendas of those days, as well as the minutes from the retreat. So I presented this to Vernon board and the SU board just last week.
And it looks like this, if this is what you sent to me, then this was also sent so that the board did have an opportunity to review it.
Awesome. So I'll just provide a brief overview, and folks from the team feel free to chime in as well. So you can see on the opening page there, we had some goals going into the retreat and some opportunities for outcomes. It's the start of a new school year, so one of the goals is to kind of recreate that team energy and introduce new people to the team. We have 2 new members of our team this summer. Provide clarity around our action plan and action steps and the expectations that we have for execution at the different school sites. We spent a good amount of time reflecting on our June board admin retreat and unpacking all of the takeaways from that day that we had spent together. We used that process to develop a draft of presentations for this school year. So I can send those around. So more specifically, Monday's agenda of the retreat, we really started with Frank and the budget. It was just an opportunity to, clarify with the team that this is, in effect, our last year of benefiting from ESSER funds to help with our budget. So we are facing some big decisions that need to be made this coming school year as we approach budget season. So really, the concept was, here we have this challenge. We really need to be able to quantify how we're utilizing all of our resources that we've invested in terms of, as you know, instructional coaches, clinicians, social workers. So we really emphasized we need to really do that work this fall and collect real data that we can help in communicating with the community as we approach budget season. So that's kind of how we kick things off. Michael Kelleher, our new HR director, provided some professional development around approaches to retention and diversifying our workforce. And then again, we spent quite a bit of time unpacking the admin board retreat. We came out of that retreat with 54 ideas that we had generated as a group, admin and board members collectively. So we took some time to put ideas together that made sense and then map out presentations for the school year that makes sense to the time frame of the school year. Other work that we did is we really focused on our continuous improvement plan, the connection from the SU plan to individual schools. Spent a significant amount of time discussing assessment, layers of assessment, and data systems that need to be in place for this coming school year. It was really good work. And as you know, we've talked a lot about EST development, MLSS planning. Michaela introduced us to a book study that we will be taking on this school year. And using ESSER funds, the past 2 years, we have also invested into new literacy and math curriculums. So we spent a significant amount of time working as a group in terms of how we're gonna start this school year and supporting our teachers so that they have what they need to access the new curriculum and how that's related to instructional coaches at central office, instructional coaches at school sites. We ended the retreat with Pietro Lynn, who provided some professional development around contract management and investigations.
Mark, we are at the 10-minute mark. Did you have any further or?
I think I pretty much covered it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you. We're really trying to stick to those times. And so what I would encourage, some of this might be new information such as this chart. I would encourage anyone to review it and send any questions to me and maybe I can compile them and maybe that'll be. Okay. So now we're moving on to the clerk's report. I will say that the minutes that were, when the minutes were created, not all of the VCTV audio was available. And so the minutes may have been posted without the additional, but that was then, the additional audio was obtained. And so the minutes on there now should reflect the whole meeting. With that in mind, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Anne. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will ask all those in favor of approving the minutes of August 8, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so we are moving on. 6:14. We are a few minutes early. We are on to public comment on non-agenda items. We have budgeted 10 minutes for that. Anyone making a comment can expect a response that falls into one of the following categories. Receive an acknowledgement of the comment with no further action planned. Receive an immediate response by the board chair or administration. Administration would be directed to contact and respond to the person. Clarification sought from the administration for a specified meeting. The topic would be added to a specified future board agenda. The matter would be referred to an executive session. A public hearing would be held in the matter. So it is 6:15 and we are starting the 10 minutes. Anyone online who would like to contribute to the public comment on agenda items? Okay, hearing no response, I'm going to ask a second time, public comment, non-agenda items. Third time, and we are moving on. It is 6:15, and we are moving on to unfinished business. Panorama, follow-up questions and concerns. We have budgeted 20 minutes. Anyone on the board have questions, concerns? Now, we talked about this at the last meeting. Now's the time to share those questions, concerns with the administration.
Well, I do have, let me start off. Several times I've asked for the full Panorama survey results for the student climate survey, the teacher perception survey, and the family survey, as well as the youth at risk survey. But I would like to make a motion that the full survey reports from the last 2 Panorama surveys be distributed to all board members.
Okay, a motion has been made for the full survey from the last 2 panoramic surveys to be forwarded to all board members. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. What do we mean by the full survey?
Oh, results of each and every item that was asked of the participants, so we can see, for example, have you been experienced bullying? I'd like to see what are the results of that for the high school, for the particular school. Each and every item, I think it'd be very useful for us board members to see the results for every item, as well as the custom items. I'm still not sure after all these years what each and every one of those custom items are. So
what we get from Panorama is a PDF of each question segregated by whole district and then individual school. Each question, they're grouped into those 3 categories: school climate, engagement, and custom. A percentage favorable response for each of those questions. Is that what you're referring to?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So I went into, I did a little bit of research with the Panorama survey, and really excited to see all that in-depth information and how other schools use that to make data-informed decisions, as well as how it helps not only assist the administration but the board with their decisions. One of the things that I saw and that was, I think, just going with what he was saying, was that there was a holistic approach where we had the student survey, but then we also had the parent climate survey, and then also the teacher climate survey. And then, so looking at that, what I saw with the PowerPoint was I did see a lot of the student survey perception, but what I would like, and Tim also is just picking off what he's saying, is seeing all of the data. So there is, when I was researching, there looks to be like some schools give out the information where they'll have a link for the public to be able to see the data, and then there's also an internal link for the administration. I think it makes sense that the school board would see all of that information as well as the questions. I did see where you could also do an open question at the end of the and in some cases you could choose, and some of the questions were really interesting about how For instance, for a student, an open question could be at the end, what would you recommend for the school to, what's something that the school could do to make me feel more welcome? And that's a place where they could put their answer. Then within that data, if we see trends of information, that's something that, that would be the administration's job, of course, but that's something that I would like to see and I would be curious of. So my ask, or my, where I'm at is I think in order for me to do my job, I need to see the data.
Okay, so one little piece of clarification. You mentioned teacher climate survey. There isn't, at this point, we don't administer a parallel to the kinds of questions that, to teachers, the kinds of questions that we ask students. It would be possible to do that, but we haven't undertaken that yet. What we do is ask teachers to evaluate a small group of students with whom they've had some interactions.
Yeah.
That's the teacher perception student survey. So what I'm hearing the board would like is for the district as a whole and for each school, that summary PDF for each of the three, and not, I have to think, I think the TPOS, the teacher perception survey, comes out that way. The summary PDF for each of those three surveys: student climate, parent family climate, and teacher perception. Correct?
When you say summary, does that exclude item by item results?
If by item you mean question by question, right, no, that's included. Question by question results are included.
And it includes the national percentiles and all that?
Where national percentiles are applicable. None of the custom questions have national percentiles because they're custom questions. The Panorama doesn't ask them, doesn't have a pool of responses to relate to.
Okay, I think that's what, thank you, Eva, I think that clarifies what we're asking.
Yeah, because it with the data-informed decision, something that I learned is that when we don't have data-informed decision, we base things on emotions, and that's not, emotions go up and down depending on if you have coffee or if you're
preaching
hungry.
to the choir on that.
So the data would be nice to see, and
sure,
and I think it'll be really helpful moving forward.
Sure.
Pretty easy to track that down.
That, what was specifically asked for is a download from Panorama.
Okay.
More detailed information requires me to go in and re-key the data to create some other what might be other requests. Right. So that specific request is pretty straightforward.
Great.
And then just one more.
Sure.
At our last board meeting when you were not present, we talked about ways of suggesting that increasing the response rate. Panorama has 5 solid ideas. This is up to you how you increase the response rate, but I think that the board would like to see those response rates go up. One way that Panorama suggests is to hype it for a week or 2 weeks before, so it's news. So there's bulletin pictures on the walls saying Panorama is coming. Second, during that 2 week of data of 2 week time period when they can do it, just 1 week or 2 full weeks when they can do it, have a little thermometer or chart saying we have a 40% response rate, 50% that. Third idea that Panorama suggests gets to what you're saying, Eva, about let the students create a question to put on the survey. Get them invested in the survey. They're more likely to do the survey if the survey is answering the question that they have. And then fourth is, what was the fourth idea of Panorama? To engage families, of course, in every which way possible. But we have an SU newsletter. I can see the SU newsletter hyping it too. These are just, Panorama has ideas on how to increase the response rate. But what I think the board wants, I can't speak for the board, but I will. But what the board wants is to see a dramatic increase in response rates.
I'll add one more thing. You mentioned the youth risk behavior survey.
Right.
That's not a survey that is sort of started from the curriculum office or from the SU office. That's a national survey
Right.
run by the CDC.
Yeah.
And we finally have school level results, or rather, I should say, grade level results for BAMS and BUHS for the winter 21 survey.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Because of all of the delays. But that's a PDF that's just this whole set of questions with information about answers to the questions. Fascinating stuff, and I think really useful for triangulating data.
Mhm.
One of the things that's very clear to me is the continued work that we need to do on engagement that shows up both in the YRBS and our climate surveys.
Could it be used as a baseline?
Well, they've done YRBS for some time, and there's always a state versus SU comparison. So we actually have YRBS data going back probably 20 years, 25 years.
Is this SU or SD?
It's given to middle schoolers and high schoolers.
Oh, okay.
I just have one question for you, Paul. You had mentioned that there's a possibility to do a teacher climate survey. And I'm wondering if that's something we can think about or see if that's a possibility. Because one thing I was curious that I wrote down was that if we have a low input from the students, maybe we could make that up with the teacher perception survey. So
Teacher climate survey.
sorry, with the teacher climate survey. So that was something that I was thinking. So if there's a possibility to be able to do that.
Sure, we can talk about that. Okay, sure.
I think that this is something that's come up, I think, at the last board meeting, and I just wanted to kind of voice it to make sure that it's known to admin who weren't there. I think all of these requests, I'm really happy to see that you're, nodding and saying, yeah, sure, we can do that. That's great, because I wasn't sure. And one of the reasons is in the past, I think that what we've heard from I think Chris Overtree told the board, and I think you've told the board, this idea of the most important thing is that you ask the question. Don't fixate on the data. And I think the disconnect for this board is we're told by the public, you make it student-centered. What are you doing? Data-driven decisions. And so we're struggling with how to do that work, and also not really vibing with that idea of, yes, it's totally important to ask the question, but the data is critical. And so I just want to voice that when we've heard, or when this board has heard those words that came from Chris Overtree, that they didn't mesh in a good way. That's what I'm hearing. I wasn't always on the board when Chris Overtree said that, but I heard it from you as well. So I just want to voice that, and I don't think it's something we need to dive into now, but I think really that's where these requests come from, is this board trying really hard to get at understanding how do we make the decisions that are data-driven. And it feels like the Panorama data is a really good tool, especially for, we have a few kind of data nerds here that, they're great data nerds. You're one of them, they're familiar. So anyway, I just wanted to voice that and make that,
Sure.
known in the room.
Eva, I can think of one other little tiny concern I have. If there were open-ended questions, we need to vet them to make sure that there's not personally identifiable information.
Yeah.
It's always a concern that you have with open-ended questions, is make sure you can't tag it back to somebody.
Yeah, and one thing I was thinking with that is that maybe there's and that's, again, just an idea. Maybe that is something that should just be internal.
That piece of it.
Yeah. Maybe that's just an internal piece.
I had a sort of going along the extra questions and maybe the questions from the students. You did some sort of a survey for the bear's image, and so I wonder if maybe that might not be an option to have the students, if you were going to choose to have the students contribute, maybe have the students contribute and then do like a tally and say, we're gonna pick the top 5 or top 10, or whatever it is, you know, whatever question or type of question rates the highest in all the questions that are contributed.
Oh, I see.
You know, so maybe that's a way to get at what the students are trying to say or how they're feeling, but also making sure that what's put in there is not identifying any students or identifying any, well, I don't know, kind of going through that process of kind of screening them. So, yeah. So, anyone else? Is there anyone online who has any?
We do have a motion that was made though.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we had a motion. Robin, would you be able to read that motion back?
The full results from the last 2 Panorama surveys be forwarded to all board members.
Okay.
Can I clarify, would it be acceptable to create a shared folder on our Google domain with PDFs so that I'm not sending you each an email with like a zillion PDFs?
That's a good idea.
And once again, this is an idea. When I did look on Panorama, they did have ones where they had links where they could give, they had passwords for internal and then they had passwords for the public. So maybe there's a way to just be able to look at the data and not have to send all that information out. It's just putting it out there that could be a possibility.
That is to say, make all of those PDFs available to the public.
No. When I was looking at the different school districts, so some of the school districts would have the information out public. So there was data that, because when people take surveys, they typically want to see a result. So there was a link where there was data that was just for the public, and then there was another link where, and each one had their own passwords, but there was another link for internal, so for admin, board, and you would have a password where you could actually see the information. Like Panorama had that system in place. I was just giving an idea. It might not work. It might not be something that could work, but it was just something that I saw, and I was like, oh, that's, if it's all in there, like, then you might not have to do all that.
If you can recreate that link and send it to me, that'd be great.
Yeah,
I'm still learning stuff about.
I'll be happy to send. I've been looking. I've just been finding Panorama really fascinating. Like, I would love to take a class in it if they had it offered, because I just found it really, really interesting.
They have a class at the high school.
Yeah, that takes the data and organizes it, and then.
Okay, so we have the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. So we have 2 more minutes on this topic. Is there anything else that? Seeing nothing, we are moving on at 6:33. So, sexual abuse investigation. So it's the investigation has been ongoing for a year, essentially. The suggestion has been made that we remind the public that our commitment to the investigation, and that's been our focus has been the commitment to the public's requests to us regarding that. I will say that we have the last executive session is to meet with our attorney, so hopefully that will result in the near future with something that we can share with the public. So, is there anyone who would like to question, comment, concern on this topic?
Mindy has a hand.
Mindy.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excuse me. I just wanted to mention that it's actually been 18 months since Attorney Goddard opened her investigation. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And that means that based on some of the work that I did to connect people with her, she's been holding reports of child abuse for some of them for 18 months, which is very concerning to me. And as I've said before, I am aware that some of the alleged perpetrators are still in your community and in other communities and still engaging in contact with minors. Whether in your schools or not, I find that very concerning, especially that somebody hired by the district has been holding reports of child abuse for 18 months. That's a long time. So I just want to say that, Kelly, you've acknowledged the enormous burden placed on survivors to come forward and make reports to Attorney Goddard. And some of them also brought forward witnesses who made reports, and that's a lot of labor on people who really want to see kids protected. So I think that, I guess I wanted to ask, this is a question, which attorney you're meeting with in that executive session. But I also wanted to stress that I think it's incumbent on the board to bring forward a report that is that really reveals the scope and the nature of the abuse and other misconduct that occurred in your schools, and that also releases the names of those who were responsible, not only as perpetrators, but who knew and should have taken action in positions of authority, supervisory positions, positions of authority, and who did not. So I think that kind of transparency is the only thing that will signal real change in this pattern. It's the only thing that would be different. There have been investigations before. And I think it's really owed to the survivors and to the community. And again, I'm not in no way suggesting that you reveal survivors' stories or identities, but just the people who were responsible, who didn't stop this, and the perpetrators. So thank you, and I really hope that you will push forward with transparency. I see a lot of, so I guess my question is which attorney you're meeting with, if I may. Thank you.
The host. The attorney that the board has been in consistent contact with regarding this.
Diana Whitney has a hand.
Diana Whitney.
Thank you. And I want to thank the board for your role in this really difficult and very painful situation for our entire community, and the burden that is also on your shoulders. Like Mindy, I do want to issue a strong call for transparency, and I'm speaking as a survivor of sexual assault, as the mother of a survivor, as somebody who reported to Attorney Goddard about abuses of power by an administrator within the district. And I want to read a quote about what matters to survivors. And I just hope you'll listen to it. It's by Judith Herman, who wrote a groundbreaking book in the 1990s called Trauma and Recovery. And she speaks about the ordeals of legal proceedings for our court system, which really doesn't provide the kind of accountability that survivors seek. What seems of paramount importance to most survivors is social validation, that is, public acknowledgement of both the facts and the harms of the crime. Beyond this, what survivors desire most is vindication. They want their communities to take a clear stand in denouncing the crime so that the burdens of shame are lifted from their shoulders and placed on the offenders where they rightfully belong. So that the burdens of shame are lifted from their shoulders and placed on the offenders where they rightfully belong. And you can say alleged crime because a lot of these, we understand statute of limitations and everything else. A lot of these things that occurred that were reported to Attorney Goddard will maybe not ever be able to be adjudicated in a court of law. But survivors came forward, they shared their deeply personal, most painful experiences with Attorney Goddard, and those will be entrusted to you. And if there is a way to transparently and equitably communicate to these survivors that the shame is lifted from their shoulders and the shame is given back to those who committed these abuses, you know, that's really what we need. And it is actually pretty simple. It's not rocket science. I understand what the attorneys are most likely going to say, which is protect the districts, you know, from liability at all costs. But, you know, a very simple statement in support of the people for whom harm was done as children and against the offenders who committed it. That's what I ask for. And I hope that you all listen. Thank you.
Nancy has it.
Nancy?
It's me. Mindy, I have a question, and I'm asking because I don't know the answer. I guess I'm wondering how we know whether Attorney Goddard has reported or not reported. Because my understanding is that you can report anonymously. In fact, I know you can report anonymously to DCF. So I'm just curious how we know that she has not. But then I would also just like to say that I am so appreciative of the quote that was just read, because the shame does not, and even though I know that the victim often carries a sense of shame, the shame absolutely does not belong to the victim. And I think it's very important that just be heard by anybody who's a victim of any sort of abuse. So.
I'd like to thank Diana for her words, and we were appreciative of Diana's article sent back in October in 2022. It was an article from the Center for Institutional Change on how an institution can transform from an institution of betrayal to an institution of courage. That was a powerful piece, and I think that's, we haven't forgotten it. Of course, what do victims want? They want to be heard. That message has been resonating with myself, and I'm sure a lot of the board members ever since you sent it. So thank you, Diana.
Anyone else? Okay, so we are at. So we are at 6:43, and my count is that's 10 minutes. I just want to make sure there's no one else. Okay.
Kelly, can I just make a comment, and it's a little bit of a question, but really more of a comment. One, you know, in regards to these, the issue around transparency and feedback, you know, unfortunately, tragically, right, we know that abuse is systemic, right, in our society. And so we can point to many, many organizations who have faced situations like this, and therefore there's a lot of examples and models of how people have managed this, you know, the communication and some of the issues that Mindy was bringing up. And what I've noticed often when organizations are in this situation and they're conducting investigations, they do give updates to the public. You know, they do give some detail. They don't just they're not just silent. They do give updates about numbers of reports and, you know, sort of some data and some understanding so that people have a sense, so that people see the progress. And it is a concern, you know, as somebody who is part of this community and, you know, I'm a member of this community and I am an employee of this community. It is a concern. The silence is a concern. And I do have a hard time understanding that type of silence when I see so many examples of organizations handle, you know, like I said, unfortunately, this is like so pervasive. You know, everybody from higher ed institutions to schools to, you know, sports associations and on and on and on. You know, there is a model and a practice for updating, and I just question why that has not been part of this process. And I just wanted to voice that because it's really, I'm really worried about the harm done.
And Kelly, I just want to say that my hope is, and I asked the question of Mindy of how do we know that the reports haven't been made? Because my hope is that no one would not report. I mean, I would hope that anybody who knows anything that puts a child at risk that's reportable would be reporting it. And so I would hope that if Attorney Goddard knows of people who are still in a position to harm children, that would have been reported. And I'm not sitting in judgment of anybody. It may be part of the process that they can't, but it's kind of horrific to think that.
It's my I see Ann has her hand up, but I'm
What it was going to be about. It is our understanding that our lawyer has been instructed to tell Mark if there's anybody currently involved or employed in our schools so that report to DCF can be made. It's a little touchier with people who don't work for us anymore.
Thank you, but yeah.
Or we have no knowledge of currently working with children.
Right. I'm just saying, I hope that we're.
It's definitely.
So, I mean, I think that is, I think that was very clear from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of our process, was that anyone.
I thought so, but I just wanted to confirm.
Thank you for that.
I just wanted to, I hear what Julianne's saying, and it brought up in me a thought from before I sat on the board when I watched the investigation coming to be, and now that I'm on the board, just acknowledging that this isn't a judgment of the process necessarily, but there's a way in which this board has really strategically, there's a lawyer who's doing the investigation, and this board doesn't really talk to that, like doesn't have any contact with that lawyer, and that insulation was I wasn't on the board when that happened, but what it has done is caused, I think, this public perception of silence, and I think I've heard Kelly say this before, that you know, I as a board member have no information that is, you know, like floating around there. There's no big reports that we're hearing that we're waiting to, and that is they're absolutely, you know, in hindsight maybe we could have set it up differently. Maybe there were ways it could have been done in a more transparent way at this juncture. But my hope as a board member is that transparent, however we view or are able to allow for transparency, will happen, and in its time. And so I realize that this is not something we're not unpacking it now, and the public is voicing these concerns, and I feel for that. I feel those concerns too. I think everybody does. But we do have, there is this very, very important structure that's been set up that has to be honored. And once it's come to fruition, then we have the questions as a board of what do we do now? And, you know, so that I just wanted to voice that, since I feel like we've heard that refrain before.
I want to just respond to that, and then we're going to Sherry, and then I think if there's nothing else, we're going to move on. I want to say that my recollection, and anyone who has, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is that the public essentially requested that the board and the board's attorney not conduct this investigation. And understandably, if there is some feeling that people in power, people in, if you want, I mean, I don't really like the abuse of that word there, but people in positions of authority, whatever, making the decisions, and the distrust that was felt based on allegations that people in the past knew and didn't report things. And so my recollection is that the public wanted us not to do it, and wanted our regular attorney not to be involved, which was why we went through this process. The other part of this is many people may understand the process of, if there is someone in administration or someone working for the school district who is fired for some reason, regardless of what it is, they have, if they're a member of the union, they have rights to a certain process. And part of that process is that they is to come to the board if they're not happy with the other steps that have happened before. And so we are also put in this position where we may have to make decisions. And so sometimes it's not appropriate for us to have information that that we may then have to make a decision on later. So that's really, I won't say that this process has been perfect. I'm not sure that anyone is totally satisfied with it. But I will say that unfortunately, there are reasons why we have followed what we have, and hopefully we will have something in the very near future. So, Sherry, and then we're going to move on because we're losing time.
I just had a simple question. Is the investigation complete?
I don't know. We will be speaking with our attorney at the end of this meeting, and we may have something in the near future to respond to that. But I will make a note of that question and try to have an answer for you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. It is 6:52. And we are moving on to G8 Local Action Plan. Tim, this was something that I believe you requested to be put on the agenda, so I'm going to ask if you have.
So, okay, this is being discussed in policy and amendments. Nevertheless, it's a policy in the books, so I think we have a responsibility to see that it's implemented. If you'll bear with me if I read a few parts of the policy. The policy is to establish a local action plan, which is really a continuous improvement plan based on student achievement data, so on. And the part that I'm particularly interested in is the school board will designate participants to serve on the action planning team from recommendations made by the superintendent, principals, other board members, and feedback from educators. We haven't established this team, to my knowledge. So I'm not ready to make a motion. I'd like to discuss it first. But I think that the policy is calling for an action planning team. Let's establish it.
Are you making a motion to establish the team?
Well, okay, I'll make the motion. My motion is that the school board will follow policy G8 and designate participants to serve on the action planning team from recommendations made by the superintendent, principals, and other board members, and feedback from educators and community members. That's right from the policy.
Is there any discussion?
I think I wanted to, I have a question. Because I do see on the policy, at the very top, there's a note that it was removed from the model list of policies, from the VSBA's model list of policies. And I know that there has been some moving parts in terms of what we call different things from pre-pandemic to pandemic to now. You know, like there's the CIP and the local action plan and the this and the that. And I'm not sure, I just want to, I refer to this policy and it's an active policy. I want clarity, you know, and I think I want to hear from the administration, like, well, how is this plan implemented? Like, you know, this is a different thing than the CIP, or this is an earlier version of the CIP? Like, can someone articulate that to me?
I want to speak to the history, Paul.
Sure. Action plans were part of a sort of a prior iteration. I think they're actually still mentioned in the education quality standards, but that's being updated as well. And the notion was that back when prior to consolidation, each school would have an action plan for the school approved by that school board, or the three would be, Bracktown schools would be approved by the Bracktown School Board. A few iterations have gone by since then, and now what I'm informed from the state is that they're looking for a continuous improvement plan at the SU level. But there's also the requirement that any Title I school, any school receiving Title I funds, create a school-wide plan, which is essentially a continuous improvement plan. There's a needs assessment process. You identify steps and you track your progress. So the way we're treating it is there needs to be an SU level plan, and there needs to be individual school level plans, particularly for those Title I schools, but pretty much all the schools are going to do individual continuous improvement plans. And there will be some coordination between the goals identified in the SU plan and the goals identified in the individual school plans. The sort of the important pieces, in many cases, the action steps are going to be quite similar. Like, for instance, peer observation across the district. That's one of the initiatives. Implementation of a multi-layered system of supports, that sort of thing. Did I answer your question?
You did, except may I ask something just to clarify? Sure. So the thing that I feel like this is dancing around is I guess I want to know at the administrative level, both the schools and the district and even SU, at the administrative level, are you focusing the planning work in the CIP, and then there's a local school plan? Is the local action plan the school level plan, and the CIP is something different? Because you answered very well, but what I want to hear is, are you doing is the local action plan, is that what this thing is called? Yeah, is the local action plan happening still? Is that work happening, or has that been absorbed into CIP work?
Improvement work is now called CIP work, not necessarily action plan work, but it's the same one.
Okay. So is there, and this is a further question, is there a policy like a CIP or a continuous improvement policy as well? Does anyone on the Policy and Amendment Committee know that? I don't know. So this is the continuous improvement plan policy.
Right.
Okay. That was a long
And
way.
the committee in editing this policy, even though VSBA has said you don't need it in your model policy, as I understand it, the Policy and Amendment Committee is still pursuing this as a policy for WSESD, but wherever it says action plan, substituting in continuous improvement.
Okay.
It's interesting to me the way this is written, and I think this has to do with how a whole bunch of policies got moved from individual school policies to individual school board policies to an SD policy. It looks to me as if currently this policy is saying that there should be a WSESD action plan, which is, I think, not the same as an SU continuous improvement plan, and also not the same as individual school-based plans, right? So, I mean, is that what you're thinking, Kim? Is that there would be a WSESD continuous improvement plan?
That was clarified at the policy meeting that we just had, yes.
That yes.
Yes, we would have a WSESD continuous improvement plan team. We already have a CIP. This is establishing a team to.
We have a continuous improvement plan for the SU. And individual schools are working on continuous improvement plans for the schools.
Yeah, but that covers the SD.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just, the way this is written, it could be interpreted as you need an SD plan, right? And I guess my question is, if what we want is oversight of an SU level continuous improvement plan, I would think that would need to be, that committee would need to be constituted at the SU level, wouldn't it?
I am not going to speak for the SU. I'm speaking for, okay, this policy is written for the, no, for the school board. It was pre-merger. So, yeah, so what we're asking for is an SD, continuous improvement plan team.
I just have one question. So since there's already an SU continuous plan, that's still in place?
What?
Right, what we're deciding is just the SD, is that correct?
There is a continuous improvement plan. It's constantly updated. The last one was April of last year, and now we're sort of updating it. But it's sort of an ongoing, continuous updating of the plan. So yes, there is a plan, but it's sort of contemplated as being at the SU level.
But that's how we planned our board admin retreat in June, was centered on the improvement plan.
Robin?
The first sentence of the policy says that it is the policy of the Windham Southeast School District to establish annually a continuous improvement plan. It sounds like that is not what we want to do. If we're already having a WSESU continuous improvement plan, and then the individual schools are having their own local improvement plans, it seems like also creating a WSESD continuous improvement plan is superfluous work.
Mm-hmm.
But that is what it says in this policy. So I think anything else in the policy is referring to that structure existing, which I'm not sure that is what we want to do.
It seems like it's double work that does not have to be done. If it's already being done at the SU level, it's the umbrella over everything. You know, it's getting all of the schools that we are in charge of, and I think it's just extra work that we don't have to be doing, or the admins don't have to be doing.
I think just because of the date, when I see July 22nd, 2019, this is a policy dump. This is you guys got merged.
Copy paste.
You had no policies. You did the right thing. So yay, I'm not saying you did a bad thing. You took all of the previous policies, you dumped them in, and you said, okay, we're adopting these. And then you started trying to go forward, and then this thing called COVID hit. And this is just one of those that you're living with. This is one of those great ones, I think, to take a step back and say, okay, what is SU? What is school? Where does SD need to be involved? Where does Vernon need to? I think you kick it back to the policy and say, figure out where this fits.
I don't think it would be untoward for this board to identify whatever representatives that they want to identify. Although the policy is actually saying that it's after consultation with the superintendent and the principals that would happen. But it would seem to me that it would be totally fair game for, after that consultation, for this board to say, here's who would be great to have on that committee. Right?
It sounds like to me that what it's asking for is for the SD to be included in that conversation, that because it says SU, that they might not be included in the conversation. So what I'm seeing is maybe we want to create an opportunity for SD to be part of that.
It seems easy enough to adopt it as an SU policy and further the policy that the members shall be appointed by the SD board, and some people from a person or some people from Vernon, they'll appoint their own folks. And then it's still all of us, and it's still the SD. But since this is apparently under the purview of the SU, there's no reason the SU can't adopt a similar policy that does specify that the board members will come from the SD board and from the Vernon board.
Okay.
So what is the mechanism for, what I'm hearing everyone saying is that this is not a necessary policy for the SD to have. If that's the case and we decide that we no longer need to have this in place, what is the mechanism for us do we just vote to inactivate the policy? I mean, what is the wording for?
I take it back to policy.
Yeah. I think this becomes, you kick it back to the policy amendment committee for review, but I think that the thing that Carrie raised is really critically important. So we do have some duplication of policies, some ways in which the wording still says principal, principal, principal when it really means superintendent, superintendent, superintendent. There's like work that could be done, and I wonder, and it is a question at the policy amendment review level. It's hard to do that global work while continuing to move the pedals of the bike, because there's there are policies that need to be reviewed actively. So I think that. I hope that I know Deborah, I don't know that Deborah's here today, but I hope that does go back to the Policy and Amendment Committee for discussion. And we've been, there's been discussion about the overall review of what are the reporting requirements needed, what do we as a board do for each of those policies. It'd be good to distinguish those SU versus SD. May I ask a question about the current CIP at the SU level?
We are at the 7 minutes. we are at the 15 minutes. Does the board want to extend the conversation by 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm officially hearing that yes, so, okay.
What I see in this policy, both at the SU and the SD level, is more than just the SD should be involved, but like community members, teachers, parents should be involved. But I don't know that I know who's involved, like who is. I know there's a CIP team, and I know that school leadership and admin leaders are on it. Mm-hmm. But is there a way in which you invite, who else is at the table in those other stakeholder groups? Is there anyone, or is that not quite happening?
That's what I've been trying to do with for the school level, reach out to the individual leadership councils and present the school level, give reference to the SU level CIP, but then present the school level CIP or school-wide plan or whatever it's called, and get the feedback at that point at the leadership councils, and then we have presented the continuous improvement plan for the SU at the SU level, at the SU board level.
Okay, I'm convinced that we should rescind the motion to establish a team. At the same time, I agree with Ann that I would hope that the SU would take this up and establish that team.
Are we sending it to the policy committee?
It's already in the policy committee.
To review?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the motion has been withdrawn. So is there?
I just have one more thing.
Sure.
So in May of 2020, there was a framework that was put out by the Agency of Education for education quality and continuous improvement framework. which is guidance for doing the CIP plan. And it would appear that that's why the previous policy was inactivated by the by the Vermont School Boards Association. So what I suspect is that this guidance took the place of that policy. And in the guidance, and I have not looked at it, I have not read the entire policy word for word, but I have not, I've found several changes from what the policy previously looked like. So I would just encourage you to take a look at that document, because I think basically what it's trying to do is put the pressure on school leadership to do the research and the data crunching, and then bring information and goals in the form of the CIP to the board as the district's improvement plan. So that, because most board members do not have the time or the bandwidth to do that in-depth work, and say, like, for instance, one of our goals is to improve reading scores, and I can't remember, it's 10%. And so that is, we got to that goal by really digging into the literacy information, looking at what we're doing, and what is the challenge for us as leadership to move our schools forward. That's a reasonable stretch, but a really big stretch. So is it possible? Yes. Is it going to take a lot of hard work? Yes. And we want you to be very aware of what our goals are, but we don't want you to have to do all the data crunching to get to that goal.
Okay, thank you. We are now at the 20-minute mark, so 7:12.
We need to vote on this.
You withdrew the motion.
So we don't need to vote on it.
I think we're done. It just goes back to the public.
Okay.
So
I found that document that Nancy said online, so I'm just gonna email that to everyone.
okay, thank you. So now we're moving on to communications, 5 minutes. So I guess I'll just make the statement that communications coming from the public are public record. If they come to the members of the board, they are public. With some exceptions, and my understanding is, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or incomplete, if there are things such as talking about a student, maybe situations such as that, or there may be other instances, but in general, if you are sending an email to a board member, it is a public record, and so you should just be mindful of that. Unless you indicate for some reason why, if you send something to a or a few board members and you don't indicate this is why I'm sending it to you, or please don't forward it along. And if there's some good reason why we wouldn't, please be aware that we may send forward the emails and the information to all board members, because that's the purpose of us being here, is to try to do the board's work. And if you're sending it to us, it's likely that all board members will need that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to members of the public. Okay, so does anyone have anything on that, or can we move on from that?
I just wanted to say, I think it's very important, and we share it with everybody, because even if you feel you have a different opinion than some members of the board, it's important that the board members receive all points of view, because our job is to look at everything. And if that's not shared with everybody, I think it's very, we don't see one side of it when we have to see every side. So I think it's very important that we all see every side and everybody's viewpoint. Nobody's viewpoint is incorrect. Everybody has a voice. That's the beauty of where we live. And everybody has a right to send that off to us, to share it with us. And it's important that we see that and we receive that.
Thank you. Anyone else, or are we ready? Okay, we are moving on at 7:15. So,
Okay, this is me.
Sure.
And this is very delayed. I had failed to get it on the agenda previous months, but basically I just wanted to disclose.
No, we're not quite. Oh. Yes, we are there. I'm sorry.
Okay. I was hired by the Month of the Young Child Committee to provide entertainment at their kickoff event. And I didn't put it together at the time that I said yes, that the payment was coming from the school board. So I received a check in the ending of June for $45. And I don't know if anybody noticed that in the warrants, but I just wanted to make that a public statement because I know that it could be considered a conflict of interest. So I've held on to the check, waiting for if anyone had something to say about that.
I would like to say that I think that the appropriate thing to do is what you're doing, even though I know you think it took time. Disclosing that level of conflict is appropriate, and I see that as a non-conflict. You know, your selection is you have an expertise, and my kids have enjoyed your expertise. You're great with children and young children. And so I'm so happy that the district, whoever in the district reached out to you is great. So I personally think that there's no conflict that I think warrants any further conversation, but I also think it's really important to raise it in this capacity anytime there's a conflict at any level.
Don't spend it all in one place.
Anyone else have any comment on this item?
I'm going on a boomerang shopping spree.
Okay, 7:17, and we are moving on. Thank you. To Leadership Council updates. We have 10 minutes budgeted for this. Any updates? I'm gonna ask one more time. Okay, well, that may be the shortest agenda item. Not even a minute. So we are moving on to subcommittees, policy and amendment and social justice committees. My understanding is they met today. And does anyone from those committees want to discuss the items that?
Yeah, I'd love to discuss it. We had a great meeting. Mark Spina was there, Michael Kelleher, our new HR director, was there, and they also came to our social justice meeting at the beginning of the month. And there was a lot of collaboration and talking and discussion and a lot of great ideas, and we're really excited to see the school district move forward in diversity and its initiative in that. I do have a motion, and I know you guys know it's coming about the diversity questions. So I do have a motion, but it's a little bit different. First we were going to do 3 questions on the applications, but we decided because of School Spring, there's two boxes where you can only put 2 questions. So we decided that we would do 2 diversity questions. The 3rd question, which is where did you hear about this job posting, would be incorporated in the interview process. So we thought that was, we thought the request from the administration was fair, and the 2 questions that we have, there's a lot of meat on the bone for those 2 questions. So we're more than happy to just do the 2 and not the 3. And if you want me to read the questions, I can. I think that'd be great. Okay, so the first question is, explain your experiences working with historically marginalized group. What have you learned from these experiences? Include times when you have made mistakes. The second question is describe your framework for equity and social justice in the classroom or workplace in its origin. And one of the other aspects with equity, which I find really I find really great about that question, is the question about accessibility. So that's not only is that an opportunity to answer the question in regards to historically marginalized groups, BIPOC people, but also the question of accessibility too. So I thought that was a really strong point.
I have a question.
Okay.
I think that's great. I'm so happy to hear that report. Was there discussion about the character limits within each question? I know that there was one question, and one of the things that was often talked about is how limiting it was. So now that it would be 2, do you know if there are character limits for each of those?
The response that I got was that there wasn't an issue with character limits. It was just those two questions being able to be put in the 2 boxes, and then having enough space to put the answer.
I think the problem is that with the question, there's a limit on characters. And so anytime we've done interviews this year, that's been feedback from candidates, is like I'm looking at one of the responses right now, that you can fit like 3 sentences in your response. So I think that
about the character limit on the answer.
On the answer, not on the question. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about.
That was
my
question too. And myself included, like when I recently had to go through this, it's very limiting in terms of how you can share your.
So I trust our HR director, Michael Kelleher. He practiced and he put the questions in, and he said it was good to go. So I trust his information.
It's the answer, not the question.
Yeah, he said it was good to. He said he could do the 2 questions. So if I think he would have given me that information if there was an issue. But if it comes in the future, we can analyze that. But the answer that I got from him was that there's space for the 2 questions and not for the 3rd question. And the way that we dealt with that is to incorporate that in the internal interview. The 3rd question: where did you hear the job posting?
I'm not sure that he looked into the answer to what they're asking. They're asking about is there space for the person to respond in a deep way to these questions? Because that is the feedback from people that have used these forms in the past, is that there is not. It limits you, it cuts you off after a certain number of characters.
Well, why don't I ask specifically?
I'm going to ask, I think we're at the 5 minutes budgeted. Okay. Do we want to add another 5?
I'd add 10.
Yes.
Okay, so do we want to add another 10 minutes to this?
Yes.
Okay, hearing at least one positive, we are adding 10 minutes to this. Okay.
Can I just add one thing here? So I'm on School Spring right now. You can, the questions can be as a short essay, 100-word answer. So when I post a job, I have 4 different types of responses boxes. So 100-word answer, a long essay, which is a 1-page answer, an extended essay, which is a 3-page answer, and a brief response, 1 word to 1 sentence long, 200-character limit. So when I post a job, I'm going to pick one of those. So one of those 2 questions is I'm going to put that in under the question, and it asks me what type of question you want to ask. I can choose one of those 4. So people who wouldn't have who ran out of space, it's been posted as probably a short essay, which is a 100-word answer. We should probably post them as long essays, which is up to one page. That's just my suggestion. Yeah. So it's totally in our court, the administrator posts the job.
Yeah, and the default is the short essay, the 100 words. Mm-hmm. So I suspect what we're doing is not looking at how many words. Like, it never occurred to me that I could change the response. Yeah. So I think what we need to do is make it clear that the expectation is that you're going to put in these 2 questions and you're going to choose long essay. Because you can't, I can't anyway, maybe you can. I can't answer those questions in 100 words in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I think and I really appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate Keith looking up that information. I think because Michael Keller is the HR director. He knows best how to input this information. And we did exchange back and forth, and he also got the information in regards to the questions. So when we got it that it could be fit, that understanding is that there's enough room there. So I trust the information that's been given to me.
But is he the one who posts all these jobs himself, or did the principals do the posting?
Admin assistants, principal, it depends on.
So it sounds like we just need to make sure that everyone knows that they need to choose the correct setting for these.
Correct.
Is there a way to change the default in School Spring?
We can probably ask Mike.
Yeah.
Just that way,
Yeah.
the admins don't have to worry about
Yep.
clicking the correct.
Yep. I'll
Yes.
officially, I'll follow up with Mike tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, so my motion is to go ahead with the 2 questions for diversity and inclusion on the applications. And the third question, where did you hear about this job, will be incorporated in the interview process.
Could you say that one more time, Eva?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so my motion is that we incorporate the 2 diversity questions into our applications. And then the third question would be incorporated into the interview process, and if Michael Keller has other ways to do that, that's a living statement. So if he has other ways to do it, it doesn't have to just be in the interview process. But those 2 questions will be the application, and then that is the motion.
That's great.
So is there any more discussion? Okay. So Robin, can you read the motion back?
This is what I wrote down. To incorporate the 2 diversity questions into the application, and the third question will be incorporated into the interview process.
Well, I would say that the diversity questions be put on all the applications,
On all applications, you want me to change?
Yeah, for the applications, yeah.
I mean, that is what I just said.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Oh, okay. To incorporate the 2 diversity questions into all, and I think in the meeting we had said it was going to be certified staff and administrators only, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess this is a friendly amendment. Can we add that language to all certified staff and administrator applications?
Mm-hmm.
And the third question will be incorporated into the interview process.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
Could I just wrap up this, in addition with the policy committee regarding D1, we also discussed the issue of the board appointing representatives to sit on the screening committees for all senior level admin positions. And that discussion is ongoing.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? Okay, it's 7:28 and we are moving on to the IRBC Putney representative. Ruby, did you?
Right, yes, it's the IBRC, Independent Budget Review Committee. A letter was sent to the board from the town of Putney. They met on August 9th and considered a candidate who came forward to be appointed from Putney to the Independent Budget Review Committee. The only town that didn't have an appointed person was Putney. And so Laura Chapman is an individual who presented herself. She came to the select board meeting, was available for questions. There was a little bit of, I showed up also, and we allowed for questions about what is this committee and why and things like that. But she's a wonderful community member. She served on the Putney Town School Board pre-merger, as well as on the select board she has served in the past. And I think that she'll be a great addition, and so does the Putney Select Board. Christina Naylor, who has been a longtime Dummerston appointee to the Independent Budget Review Committee, also was happy to have her on board as well. So this is presented to you, and this letter was sent around to the board, and I think that this board needs to appoint Laura Chapman, or consider that appointment request.
I move that we appoint Laura Chapman to the Independent Budget Review Committee.
Okay, motion has been made. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of appointing Laura Chapman to the IRBC Putney representative, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful.
Have we approved the other three?
Yes, it was done at the
organizing
at the
meeting.
annual meeting. One other thing that was talked about at that board meeting was around a process for going forward. Historically, Putney has had a hard time in the moment of the annual meeting having someone step up, and so there was discussion about perhaps there could be a way that our town meeting happens before the annual meeting, the school's annual meeting. So if potentially at the town meeting there could be someone from the floor there that then could be presented at the school's annual meeting. So there was discussion about that, and I think it's a work in progress. That's at the Putney. It will be different from town to town, but I think Putney is interested in finding some systemic process rather than flailing after the fact.
Ours is after.
That's true. The representative town meeting. That's true.
Okay. Then we are 7:31. We are moving on to Communication Council. Ruby, you wanted to talk about the meet and greet to fill the vacancy of the board from Brattleboro.
Right.
I will acknowledge that we do have 3 candidates who have sent in something indicating that they are interested, but because we have the deadline, we had posted the deadline of September 22nd, they've been advised that we need to hold off on moving forward in the process until that deadline is passed. But however, it's always better to have more, the more people to.
Can you, at the last meeting, there were 3 people who'd expressed interest but hadn't formally put in the letter of interest.
There were 2 who had sent their letter of interest, and then there was one that was in the middle of, in the process of doing it, so.
So at the last meeting, and Robin is also on the Communication Council, and wasn't at the last meeting, so she can chime in as well. We discussed kind of broadly what at the Communication Council meeting, we kind of talked through what were creative, strategic ways to get the word out about this appointment and try to find candidates. One of them was a meet and greet, which came from this board, comes kind of like brainstorming from this board. And I think the question that I have is if we, should we be going, do we want to go forward with the meet and greet no matter what? Even if we do have 3, options in our coffers, just from an engagement perspective, or are we satisfied that people heard the cry, we have 3 candidates, we don't need to rush for this. A meet and greet might be a great idea. I think Tim has said that before, and might be a great idea anyway. But so I guess that's a question I have. We did talk at the meeting about we kind of thought through perhaps like a week before the due date, having a meet and greet on a Saturday in a public place, in the morning, and I just don't know. That would mean, I don't know, the 17th or something of, I can't remember what the date is, but like one week before the 22nd. So I don't know if there are any conversation points about it. I didn't re-forward it, but there was I sent an email to the board before the last meeting on August 8th. And that had a draft kind of write-up that Robin drafted that we could consider asking Mark to send out to the entire community that informs people. It could go potentially in a future newsletter. Those are the things that are on the table. And I don't know if action is warranted or not, but potentially, if we want to move forward with the meet and greet and we want to ask Mark to utilize the language that is more descriptive than just the little ad, I think we might need to act in this meeting.
Any thoughts?
I am wondering if if do we need the board's approval of that blurb to send that out, and it was just something to like explain to people a little bit more, like what is it? What do you do when you're on the school board? Do you want me to read it, or did you guys review this at the last meeting at all?
It was sent by email to the board. We've never read it out.
I'll just read it now since the public is not privy to our emails. The blurb was to say, the Windham Southeast School District WSESD Board is seeking to appoint a representative from Brattleboro to complete a vacated term. The appointment will last until March 2024 with a prorated compensation calculated from the $7,000 annual stipend for school board members, approximately $3,500 based on 6 months. The role of a school board member is to be part of a team focused on ensuring a high-quality education for all students and fiscally responsible operation of the district. The board meets at 6 p.m. on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month with a goal of meetings no longer than 3 hours, but they sometimes are longer. Sometimes additional meetings or trainings are necessary. All board members are invited to serve on subcommittees of their choosing with the approval of the full board. Each board member serves as board representative to one of the leadership councils, which normally meet once a month for 2 hours or less. Between board meetings, board members must review warrants for expenditures by the district and are invited to contribute to board meeting and committee meeting agendas. Board members must maintain confidentiality about privileged information. Please feel free to reach out to any board member via email if you would like to know more about board service. And there's a link to the page where it has all our contact info.
Okay, we are just past the 5 minutes that we budgeted for this. Do we want to extend the time for another 5 minutes? Yes. Okay, so,
I would recommend that we put that there is an opportunity for people to go on Zoom, if possible, just because so maybe that would invite more families to participate. That there is that option.
Okay, I can add a sentence of that. Just having a copy and pasting problem here. The board meets at 6 p.m. on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month in a hybrid format, in person and on Zoom. Is that good?
Is that good? Yeah. Okay. So do we want to vote on approving the communication council to send this out? Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the communication as dictated by Robin, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
And the second point was about the meet and greet and whether or not it makes, if we are going to go forward with it, I think the communication council is willing to help set it, like make it happen, but we would just need to know if that's the will, then we will start working. If not, then we won't.
I have one. Would it be possible for the communication committee to find the space that's available before they do the meet and greet? Because I know right now I'm trying to find space to do, and it's been kind of difficult. So I'm wondering if that.
We discussed a few different places, and one was the Brattleboro Library, which I think has a number of places, but we ended up settling on a public space such as the Works. I think someone said that the Brattleboro Select Board utilizes that the cafe space for a kind of coffee with the Select Board, and that's where I think the idea initially came from. And there is a kids area. I have not approached the Works yet, in part because of all the moving parts. Yeah. But I think the intention would be, if it's the will for us to do it, I think we were thinking the Works would be our first choice. And like you said, things are sometimes difficult. So if that doesn't work, we would move on to the next idea.
Okay. I would just say maybe approach them, because sometimes you think it's okay and it's like they have like rules about it, like you just advertise, now there's like 30 people. I don't know if 30 people would show up, but they might be something. So I would probably.
That was our intention. Yeah. Our intention is not to just kind of like flash mob anywhere. Even if it was the library, we'd be reserving a room, and we'd in addition be saying, and this is what we will be doing. But yeah, no, I think anywhere that we're going to be, it would, because it's going to be a publicly warned meeting, we would be making sure that it's okay for us to be there.
Okay, so our next meeting, according to the ordinary schedule, would be the 12th. So would you be sending out maybe a doodle poll to the board to see who might be available on which days to determine the best day for this?
I think that would probably be it. I think what we talked about is the most not most important. We envisioned, I think, at least one Brattleboro representative being there, possibly more than one if they can, and then one non-Brattleboro member, and I was offering to do that as a communications council member who could be there to help if we're able to secure a child area, have crafts and things like that, so that was something that's clear that people can come, and if they have children, that's not an imposition. So we can absolutely put around, it is a publicly warned meeting. There's no actionable items on the meeting, but I think that means more than quorum could show up, right? But we just won't be acting on anything. But I think we would only send out that doodle poll if we as a board thought it was a good idea to do it, regardless of the fact that we already have 3 sitting letters of interest.
What do members of the board think about the fact that we have 3 letters of interest, and do we want to have it sounds like you're saying that might be a good idea to have the meet and greet regardless of whether we have the 3 letters. So the question is, how does the board feel about doing this meet and greet, and do we want a doodle poll to be sent out to try and set this up regardless of whether we have the 3 or even if it's just a meet and greet, to just meet and greet the board? I mean, is there an interest in going through that process to have the meet and greet?
Yeah, I think so. We need the more applicants, the better. I don't know any of the 3, but it doesn't matter. The more the better. The deeper the pool.
I would recommend there be a Zoom meet and greet, because it is a lot of people still, especially if it's in the afternoon or when people are working. Like we actually might get people jumping in if we had open hours, from this hour to this hour, come talk to a board member. I think doing both might be, since we're already doing a hybrid, it might be good to have both.
Okay. We have actually gone a few minutes over.
Could I make a motion and then we try to get it done quicker? So I move that the board direct the communications council to facilitate a meet and greet. Period.
Okay. So the motion has been made. Any discussion?
Should it have the identification of the meet and greet? The purpose of the meet and greet?
So you are
Meet and greet to promote interest in appointing a board candidate from Brattleboro.
Did you get that, Robin?
Yes.
Wait, is that the title to get people to?
That's just a descriptor of what the meet and greet is, not necessarily a title that will be used in public discourse.
So Robin, can you read the motion back?
That the board direct the Communications Council to facilitate a meet and greet to promote interest in appointing a board candidate from Brattleboro.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. Thank you. And we are 7:45 and we are moving on to the Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee. Ruby, this was something else that you had mentioned at the last couple meetings, I believe, rotating locations of the board meetings. And a couple meetings ago, I think we talked with Paul about maybe some challenges that might be involved in that. And I don't know if you've had a chance to investigate that at all.
Julianne, how's the internet connection?
It's good now.
Good now.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. That was one of the questions, and apparently it has improved.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you say that that's the same, that is true of all the schools? I mean, if we're Ruby sent out
On July 25th, there was an email to the board and Paul and Mark. And the proposal from the committee was actually envisioning starting in September. The first meeting of every month would be in this space, the Cusick room. The second meeting would be rotated from school to school, and we propose a relatively arbitrary, assignment of schools, although we did keep in the months where the roads are the worst, tried to not put them in the farthest towns. So Guilford and Putney, and maybe even Dummerston, were not in the dead winter. And that was a strategic decision.
Okay.
So I think we've heard from multiple leadership councils and their reports. We've heard from community members a desire to return to this model. So if we are able to, with confidence, say, well, at least let's give it a try. We don't think there are any glaring, problems anymore. If we are able to do that starting in September, I think that would be a big sign. And I think there'd be support within our communities.
Okay, so you've seen the list, Paul, of the schools.
It's in your
email.
It's in your email.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you want to? Do we need to make a motion to attempt to start locating our second meeting of the month in area schools?
I can make a motion and then we can discuss and decide. I move that the board adopt the schedule of rotation for board meetings presented by the Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee that will have board meetings rotate on a monthly basis to each of the schools in the district.
Motion has been made. Is there any discussion? No discussion?
I have something. Hang on one
Okay.
second. I'm just typing that down. I just wanted to say, I think that we should send this schedule to the principals before we adopt it, because they might have an idea about when they wanted it to be at their school or not be at their school if they have something else going on. So if right now, the schedule that was created just says first meeting and second meeting, doesn't have the exact dates on it, but I think we should create something that has the exact dates of the meetings that are proposed to be at these individual schools, and then send it to the principals and be like, how do you feel about having a board meeting at your school on this evening?
So my ask, because I know that this was one of the things that we talked about at the board retreat, was principals staying, being there for a full day and then staying at the board meeting and having longer hours. So and this is just my ignorance, I'm not sure if the ask is going to require the principals to have longer hours and more expectation for them to be there. I don't know if there's if it'll make more work for them. That's, I guess, what I'm asking.
I appreciate the question, Eva. I don't think so.
Okay. That was easy. Okay.
Yeah. I would echo what Robin said. If I could, I think it's really important to collaborate with the principals. I mean, there is setup, so you have to set up in a room, which includes janitorial service. So it's not just like all of a sudden we can show up. There has to be some forethought. So
I don't know, and I've been doing that for years here, Sean.
Show up. What I wonder is if we could.
And leave it this way.
If we could address the motion and leave if we left out if we said the second. If we indicated that our intention was to start in September, and that it be, if it's on at the second meeting, leave the scheduling of the actual schools for that to happen to the administration. Would that be sufficient to address some of Robin's concern and Eva and Sean? Would that be sufficient to address your concerns?
I think maybe if we just change the motion to get rid of the word schedule and just say, move that the board adopt the proposal presented by the PPA committee that will have board meetings rotate on a monthly basis. That way we can work out the exact schedule later.
Okay. Just a quick clarification, you do mean the primary schools, right? Not like move to BAMS or VUHS?
No, the schedule that we put out, the only entity that's not identified as EES here, but BAMS, Windham Regional Career Center, VUHS are all separately in the rotation cycle that was discussed at the committee level.
How come you didn't put EES on it?
I think at the time we didn't. Now we've had a retreat at EES. We didn't understand what EES is a very dispersed thing, and if the goal is to allow stakeholder access and a feeling of community and engagement, we weren't convinced that there was an EES location that would make sense. Now there may be. I don't know what the logistics would be to access to that building.
We've had board meetings there for the Brattleboro Town Board.
So I think there are actually in the summer, the way it's laid out here in the summer months, there was no rotation at all. So it was just this room for summer. But EES could be added in. But if the motion as you kind of friendly amended it, I think could allow for adjustments to the schedule that's been proposed.
Liz, did you have a question or comment?
At the last EES meeting, they're moving out of Canal Street completely, so that the location would be on Birch Street. Just wanted to note that, and we would have no business going to Westminster, so there's your location.
Robin, can you read the motion again?
That the board adopt the proposal presented by the policy, I'm sorry, I just wrote an abbreviation there. What's the name of the committee?
Policy, Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee.
Sorry, thank you. That the board adopt the proposal presented by the Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee that will have board meetings rotate on a monthly basis to each of the schools in the district.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. So it is 7:54, and I'm going to assume we are done with that unless somebody indicates else. And move on to the board retreat. Well, I'll just jump back to the previous topic and just indicate that I assume that you will coordinate with the principals and determine which school is the best fit for that second.
I'll send an email.
Sure.
Whoever hosts gets a bye for the next board.
There you go.
All right, thank you. So now on to the board retreat. I did budget 5 minutes. We'll try to move past it quickly. Carrie Amadon, thank you very much. She created a summary from the board retreat, and that was sent to all board members. So the handouts that we got this evening from the superintendent, the leadership retreat agendas, and the leadership team notes. Those will be very helpful. They were sent out to everyone. Now we have this calendar, which those will all be helpful when we have our second evening. So we can go over the goals from the board admin retreat in June. We can go over this information here, and we can develop a board calendar to hopefully keep us on track and make sure that we are getting things accomplished that we need to. So I guess I'm gonna ask if Ruby will send out another doodle poll, so we can try to get that scheduled. Anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Okay, so then we can move on from that at 7:56. VSBA, VSA annual conference. I hadn't really thought about this being addressed at a board meeting because it indicates that the annual conference it indicates that for board chairs and superintendents. I'm not sure if other board members generally go. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to attend. If I can't, or maybe even if I can, Deborah has indicated that she is interested and available to go. If anyone does feel like this would be helpful to them, then they could please let me know, and I can coordinate with Mo and Ruby.
It's interesting, I did not read, so I'm getting these emails from the VSBA, and to me, this particular conference wasn't one that was specific to just board chairs and vice chairs. It seemed like it was one that would count towards whatever the professional development thing that you need to do towards like collaboration with the admin. But I was reading in the kind of promotions around it a networking opportunity, and actually all school board members being invited to be in that space. But maybe I'm wrong.
No. I looked at it and I said, oh gosh, then that means, if other board members are interested in going, please. I'm sure that the more people on the board who experience it, who receive the information, the better. So anyone who's interested, either let me know or let Mo know.
I'm saying this because I think that there is benefit to more than one person going. I'm interested in going in part because it's an opportunity for networking and relationships within our board, but also I've been attending the VSBA network, not their networking thing, I haven't gotten to that one yet, but like the little Zoom calls that they do. And they're really amazingly informative. And so I'd encourage us all to, especially newer members, to attend those, but I think this is an opportunity to come together. It is 2 days, which sucks, and it is far away, which also sucks. But
I'm not sure whether both days are, it was unclear to me whether both days were necessary. But I don't know.
Could I just get, I didn't see that email, so could somebody forward that email to me?
Just me chiming in. I've gone prior years. I will say, I think last year, I don't think anybody went. We weren't in a good place last year. I think Mark was the only one to go, and Mark came back going, it was awesome. It was all student-centered, and the students did all these things. And I was like, should have sucked it up and gone. I think you can, I'm gonna try to make 1 day. I don't think I can do 2 days. But I think maybe we all need to have that conversation of who can go what day and make sure there are a good group of us there. You can learn a lot. It really is very worthwhile.
Totally agree.
That's my plug.
Thank you, Kate. Anything else on this topic?
Well, it's related. A couple of us have been speaking with members of the WN, the Windham Northeast School District, been having some really good conversations. And they're very open to any board member. I know it sounds crazy. Do you want to go to another board member meeting outside of the district? But it's worthwhile. So if anybody wants to join me in visiting their board meeting next week, I'll send something out. They're going to have they call it a listening in, where a member of the community talks about education from the community members' perspective.
Yeah, please send the information.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
That's great.
Well, it looks like we 8:01. We are at the first executive session. So we are actually early in our schedule. This may be working. I know.
Great job, Kelly.
So the first executive session, I think we need to invite in Mark.
Before we do this, could we have a short break?
We most certainly may. Yes, so I will, how about a 10-minute break?
Great.
Okay, so 8:02. So 8:12, we will reconvene.
May I start moving people into the
8:12, I'm calling the board meeting back to order.
And just so you guys know, this room is much cooler than that room was. And it's not very cold. So you.
Well, I think we're.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
No problem.
For that warning. So I will ask if there is a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage when we go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A3, the appointment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during the open meeting. This is in regards to student reps. So is there such a motion for a finding?
So moved.
Thank you, Anne. All those in favor of that finding, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you. So now is there a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A3, the appointment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during the open meeting, and inviting in Mark Spino. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. All those in favor of the motion to go into executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you. So we have invited Mark Spino in. We have budgeted 10 minutes for this. Let's see if we can get that.
Wow, you're cool.
At 8:18. And Tim, did you have a motion?
And we'll
Oh, and
I move that this board approve the recommendation for student rep made by the committee, you guys call them?
Student rep committee.
The student rep committee.
any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. Great. So now, on to executive session 2. Is there a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage with a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A7 in regard the academic records or suspension or discipline of students in regards to student transfers? Is there such a motion for such a finding?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. So then is there a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A7, the academic records or suspension of or discipline of students regarding student transfers and inviting in Mark Spino? Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Kim. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful. So we are back at 8:40. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the student transfers recommended by the superintendent?
So you can go ahead.
You could go ahead. You haven't done it.
So moved.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. Okay. And I know there will be, I anticipate one abstention, so I'm going to do a roll call vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. So there's Robin and Kim and Sean and Tim and Anne. Any opposed or abstentions? Oh, well, opposed. Okay, so opposed is Eva, and abstentions, there is Ruby. Okay. Okay, so we have approved the recommendations. So then the last thing on the agenda is for the board to go into executive session. And last one for the evening. We are a few minutes ahead. Is there a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage, with the understanding that a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1F confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body will be made?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. All those in favor of that finding, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so is there a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1F confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body, for the board to meet with attorney Kendall Host, who we will be inviting in?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We are in executive session at 8:40.
There will be no action taken, correct?
And there will be no action taken.